If you've ever wanted to witness an inflated ego deflate overnight, look no further than the current situation with Mike Israetel right now. He's gone from boasting about being the smartest person on Earth, claiming he's smarter than anyone on a raw IQ scale. Virtually every coach out there touting an astronomically high IQ, scoring perfectly on every question given. And while my IQ is over 160, we can't determine just how high, since standardized tests don't extend beyond that, to having the very documents that underpinned his entire career obliterated in just a matter of days, instead branding himself as a perfectionist jerk with a PhD. Yeah, absolutely. That's why I refer to him as Dr. Mike. Wow, that's a big deal. And it's clear that this weighs heavily. All I feel is anger and frustration as it inflicts lasting harm on the shining reputation he's spent his entire life cultivating, and at this point, he has no one to hold accountable but himself. He could have sidestepped this entire business fiasco by being honest with his audience, but his inflated ego and arrogance held him back from confessing any wrongdoing. I suppose I did submit the incorrect draft to the graduate school, and that's been, sorted out now, but yeah, my PhD was what Jared Fletcher would describe as 100% fine, which is just a nice way of saying it happened and it was acceptable. And now he's teetering on the brink of losing his reputation as one of the most esteemed fitness coaches worldwide, transforming into the internet's punchline. Hi, I'm the Who Else, and I produce weekly YouTube documentaries. And today, we're diving into the monumental and embarrassing downfall of Mike Israetel, illustrating how his greatest accomplishment was revealed as a facade, the terrible defense he crafted to attempt to reclaim it, and how even after coming clean, he continues to deceive everyone. But hey, I'll never mislead you about urging you to subscribe, so smash that subscribe button, and let's jump right into the video. To truly understand why the entire fitness community is so enraged with Mike Israetel, we need to explore how he rose to prominence as a leading authority in fitness. In the first place, Mike's love for fitness and bodybuilding ignited during his high school years, when he became a part of the wrestling team, but not quite in the way you would think. It was his disappointment with the methods of wrestling coaching that propelled him towards training instead. So, how did the transition happen from wrestling to bodybuilding? What was that shift like for you? Well, my wrestling experience wasn't exactly stellar. We cycled through several coaches, and they didn't really, they somewhat employed exercise as a form of punishment for us. For some reason, it just didn't. I was an exercise enthusiast, so I couldn't grasp the idea that exercise was bad. Like, I distinctly remember having a light bulb moment early into wrestling where I thought, okay, if training enhances our abilities and we wish to improve, wouldn't rewarding us with more training be the smarter approach, rather than punishing us with it? Yep, this passion morphed into an obsession by the time he reached college, where he studied kinesiology at Michigan University and secured a master's from Appalachian State University in exercise science. These credentials would have been more than sufficient for him to land a job as a trainer, or even a professor. But Mike had his eyes set on loftier goals, a doctorate, so he made the decision to enroll in the Sports Physiology PhD program at East Tennessee State University. And following 3 years of intensive academic research, he obtained his doctorate in 2013 with a dissertation titled The Interrelationships of Fitness Characteristics in Division I Athletes, which compared a total of 80 Division I athletes across 4 different sports. The relationships between fitness traits in Division I athletes analyzed a sample of 80 athletes from 4 different sports, based on various elements such as strength, power, vertical leap, and sprint speed. Completing his doctorate opened up numerous opportunities for Mike. This enabled him to secure a position as a professor at Temple University in Philadelphia, as well as the University of Central Missouri. He taught courses in sports and exercise science, but Mike aspired to share his knowledge with a broader audience. With the assistance of his former college friend, Nick Shaw, Mike founded Renaissance Periodization, an online fitness coaching company rooted in scientific principles, which was later rebranded to RP Strength. To enhance the marketing of his business, Mike also created the RP YouTube channel in 2012, a choice that ultimately transformed his life forever. Initially, the channel featured rather generic workout videos, but as his audience grew, he began infusing his videos with his exercise science expertise. As for minimum effective volume, it's a bit tricky to determine formally, because we have a book titled How Much Should I Train? It delves deep into training principles on Renaissance Periodization.com, discussing how to accurately determine your MEV. Identifying minimum effective volume requires assessing multiple training mesocycles where you intentionally employ minimal volume to find the threshold that results in no growth. For example, if you grow on 14 sets per week, that's fantastic. But if you reduce it to 11 sets per week and still see progress, then 11 is your minimum effective volume, not 14. Due to the rarity of such credible content in the fitness industry at the time, more and more individuals, from beginners to seasoned veterans, flocked to his work. They started viewing him as the premier fitness authority online. However, what truly distinguished Mike was his assurance in both his abilities and teaching methods. He was so confident that he even critiqued some of the most legendary physiques, such as Ronnie Coleman, the 8-time Mr. Olympia. It's crucial to remember that Ronnie didn't develop his extensive muscle mass through unconventional methods. He relied heavily on classic routines like squats for sets of 8, sets of 10, hack squats, and leg presses, often with a significant range of motion. He emphasized multiple sets of moderate repetitions. That's the true path to muscle building, and that's exactly how Ronnie accomplished it, just as our grandparents did. Sets of 2 and sets of 4 in squats and deadlifts, which Ronnie's famous for? That's more a matter of style and confidence than an effective strategy. This level of confidence, combined with his seemingly smarter fitness advice, propelled RP to over 3.8 million subscribers. With RP's flourishing success also came Mike's individual achievements. His recognition as an exercise scientist, along with the explosive growth of his channel, led to invitations to appear on some of the largest podcasts on YouTube. His success further extended through the launch of his fitness apps and published books. All of this reinforced his status as one of the most distinguished fitness experts in the world. However, once you reach the pinnacle, the only direction left is down. And that's precisely what happened when Mike found himself under scrutiny by another well-known fitness expert on YouTube. The drama initiated on December 5th, 2019, when Greg Dussault posted a video entailing Jeff Nippard versus Jeff Cavalier. Is volume killing your gains? In this video, Greg criticized Jeff Nippard's scientifically backed method for building muscle, labeling it as the incorrect way to train and asserting that the average person would benefit more from simply pushing themselves to the limit. He claimed, people are lazy, they don't put in the hard work, so advising them to hold back when they're already underperforming is foolish and absurd. He went on to say, encourage them to work harder, harder than they ever have before. This video, while not directly involving Mike, naturally drew attention to him as a science-based lifter. Consequently, he was asked to share his opinions on Greg's video and did not shy away from voicing them. He criticized it as a flawed approach to exercise, claiming that the average individual is better off pushing themselves to their limits. People are often lazy, inadequately training, suggesting someone hold back when they're already not giving their all is utterly foolish and absurd. Encourage them to exert more effort, push harder than you did yourself. This video wasn't directly related to Mike. However, as a lifter grounded in science, he shared his opinions on Greg's video and held nothing back. I'm almost certain I watched the complete video by Greg, yet he never truly addresses how much. He just keeps insisting to push harder and raises his voice a lot. It's amusing, but honestly, there's hardly anything to glean from it, other than the push to train harder, though he might have a valid critique. Maybe some folks out there really do need to train a hell of a lot harder because there are weak ones everywhere, and that could very well be the case. For some individuals, that's spot on. For others, maybe not, but it definitely rings true for many. Still, once you realize, alright, I am pushing myself hard, then do you go for 3 tough sets, 6 or even 9? However, Greg wasn't swayed by Mike's perspective, and just 3 days post-interview, he uploaded another video specifically challenging Mike's beliefs. First point, coming close to failure, about 2 or 3 reps shy if you assess the overall evidence, doesn't seem to provide significantly more stimulus than pushing all the way to failure. So the whole argument about going to failure crumbles right there. 2 to 3 reps short of failure? That's not really close to failure. For this guy, that's practically a warm-up. I don't train weak. Greg contended that Mike's remarks could be misinterpreted by people as a signal to lighten up on their gym efforts even more. And despite his fiery delivery, many were in agreement with him, citing comments like, I'm heading back to the gym. I definitely didn't train harder this morning. Nobody inspires me like you do, Greg. Much respect. You're such a legend, and I concur with every single word. I adore your training approach. Noticing this, Mike opted to confront Greg in a face-to-face debate on December 18th, 2019, intending to disprove him, but unfortunately for Mike, it dramatically backfired. A crucial detail here is that Greg didn't carry his loud persona into the debate. He attentively listened to everything Mike expressed, then gave a respectful rebuttal. This appeared to catch Mike off guard, who looked uninterested and was even spotted yawning during their exchange. As for the debate itself, neither party yielded from their positions, and they constantly found themselves at odds, even over fundamental concepts like training volume. The concept Greg referred to is mathematical volume, which involves multiplying sets by reps, weight, and distance. And that's a solid concept, but I think a slightly different one can benefit us more in training. It revolves around the quantity of hard sets being performed, because the number of hard sets as you perform, anywhere from 5 to 30 reps close to failure, tends to be effectively comparable for hypertrophy across those rep ranges. As the weight increases, the stimulus per repetition for hypertrophy also rises, but fewer repetitions will also be needed. However, for most viewers tuned in, Greg emerged as the clear victor, with many getting turned off by Mike's aloof and disinterested demeanor. As highlighted in the top comment of this video, Greg checked his ego at the door for this, Mike didn't. What none of the viewers anticipated at that moment was that this was merely a glimpse of Mike's stubborn perception of being right about everything. The decline began in mid-2023 when Mike announced his return to competitive bodybuilding to earn his IFBB Pro card. Sadly, turning pro necessitates the use of steroids. Mike was aware of this as well, but with his PhD in fitness, people assumed he'd know how to handle them safely. Yet, even if he couldn't manage his usage effectively and avoid the nasty side effects anxiety like you wouldn't believe, every day I'm on high doses. I awaken feeling apprehensive about the day ahead. All I experience is rage, frustration, anger, and anxiety. Each morning that I'm on high doses, I wake up dreading the day ahead, overwhelmed by rage, frustration, anger, and anxiety. On the outside, I'm like, hey there. But on the inside, I'm shouting, say something, let's get this party rolling. I refuse to live like that. It's absolutely dreadful. What's the term for it again? Intrusive thoughts. I'm plagued by violent thoughts all the time. Which is when Greg decided to feature Mike's story on his channel yet again and began posting videos pushing Mike to abandon his dream of going pro at the expense of his health. I've got a serious anxiety disorder. What this indicates is likely a form of chronic illness. This is not ideal, it's not healthy. Someone with all these health indicators combined probably shouldn't be competing. Why is Mike jeopardizing his health and life just to step on stage? Yet this seemingly heartfelt concern was also laced with Greg's notorious rage bait roast sessions. Let's see how those tactics actually perform in the real world. Thanks a lot, Greg. Is he truly the master trainer you all think he is? The master dater? Or simply a master bather? Did he spend time on a lobster boat like Coach Greg, and is he actually the master bather? This carried on until July 2024 when Mike revealed he would be stepping back from competitive bodybuilding after a disappointing showing at a competition because of poor tanning, a point Greg also called him out on. After getting into what can only be described as the best shape of my life, I ended up outside the top 5 at my latest show, largely ironically because of poor tanning. It wasn't just about the tan. It wasn't the tan. I apologize for that. I'm telling you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. Sure, a tan can enhance muscle definition, but if you're off, if you're not tight, losing 10 pounds won't fix that for Mike, who was already feeling defeated by not reaching his goals. This was the final straw for him. He had truly had enough. So, in an interview with Mike Talander in October 2024, titled Why Mike Israetel Hates Greg Duzette, he responded in the most explosive way imaginable back in the day on Omar Isis's channel with Greg Duzette, who is a two-faced, deceitful sociopath. He elaborated on how Greg deceived him and made him appear unfavorable during their initial debate, spewing all kinds of trash in his videos with his fake voice, about how foolish I was and how misguided I was about volume or whatever the heck it was, and I thought, wow, this guy really wants a shot at the title. So when we finally met for a debate, I matched that energy. Then he switched off his parrot voice and turned into Mr. Nice Guy, and nearly all the comments were like, oh my god, this Mike guy is such a jerk, while this Greg character just came in to learn. No, he wasn't there to learn. Many of Mike's supporters praised him for putting Greg in his place. However, what nobody saw coming was how Mike would keep pushing this assertive attitude going forward. Mike appeared to adopt a "no one is superior to me" mindset. He repeatedly asserted that he was sharper than every other coach. On a raw IQ scale, I'm more intelligent than nearly every coach, maybe even all of them, and I possess a deeper understanding of physiology, body responses, and similar topics than most of them do. I scored above 160 on the IQ scale. I took the Ravens Advanced Progressive Matrices test and hit the highest mark, answering every question correctly. So my IQ is above 160. We can't pinpoint how high since they don't conduct standardized tests above that level, which again makes me superior to nearly everyone else. Additionally, in every aspect of human behavior, I'm tougher than you. I can drink closer to failure than you. I can sustain it longer. I've got more willpower than you. I'm simply better than you, Lyle. And I claimed that no one could contest my method since nobody knows more about fitness than I do. If you think you know, you're assuming you understand more than me about something I happen to be one of the leading experts in the world at, and also something I'm actively involved in myself. Whatever suggestions you might have about how to help me improve, just know that his egotistical and overconfident demeanor really put off many of his supporters, with them claiming things like his ego is the reason he hasn't performed well at shows, whilst Mike has achieved a great deal through YouTube and RP. I do believe he has a solid knowledge of training, but it genuinely makes me chuckle how highly Mike thinks of himself regarding bodybuilding. He claims to understand his body better than anyone, yet he has consistently shown up out of shape at every competition, insisting on his qualifications. This led some to scrutinize Dr. Mike's PhD thesis to determine if he was genuinely as credible and wise as he professed, and what they unearthed was astonishing, to say the least. The first individual to thoroughly analyze and present his findings about Mike's thesis was a YouTuber by the name of Solomon Nelson, who uploaded a video on September 29th, 2025, titled Mike Israetel's PhD, the biggest academic scam in fitness. And as you might guess from the title, he didn't have anything positive to say about it, going as far as to label the entire thesis as shallow, poorly constructed, and muddled. So naturally, when I finally got my hands on Mike Israetel's PhD thesis, I anticipated a masterpiece, an intellectual triumph. Instead, I'm dealing with an arrogant perfectionist boasting a PhD. Oh, absolutely, that's precisely why I use that term, Dr. Mike. Good grief. That's quite significant, and I've noticed it carries substantial weight. All I felt was rage and disappointment. What I uncovered was a document so poorly executed, so shallow and disjointed that it could only pass in a failing system. For those unaware, for a PhD thesis to gain acceptance, the researcher must provide a meaningful contribution to the knowledge in their field, and in Mike's instance, he utterly failed to accomplish that. In reality, all his thesis revolved around proving concepts that were already widely recognized at the time. The declared aim of Mike's thesis was to examine interrelationships among fitness variables that he asserted were less clear in existing literature. However, the main finding